elaborate why I actually have that impression. And there's basically three underlying trends that we observe on a regular basis. On the one hand, we have programmatic advertising that's been picking up over the last couple of years massively. So we have the publishers with the eyeballs. They offer up a very targeted profile through their SSP, through their supply-side platform. We have the advertisers, on the other hand, that want to reach that audience, and they use their DSPs to then connect and bid on the actual ad impression. And that's very good and fine, and it has created the real-time bidding system, which is pretty much an egalitarian marketplace, if you so want. And that's one of the major trends. With the aside, of course, that over time there's additional things happening in their marketplace, things like first look happening, where the biggest advertisers actually get to circumvent the whole system and have a first look at the audience, which of course kind of takes away the egalitarian side of the marketplace, but that's a different topic. And that's the first major trend. The second major trend that we see happening is a massive shift from desktop to mobile. And obviously, on mobile, the formats will have to be totally different. It's a much smaller screen, it's a lot more difficult. There's still a lot of experimenting happening on what advertising formats really work well on mobile. So it's not quite as clear, but that's definitely happening at the same time. And the third major trend that leads to my conclusion is the ongoing development of AI that we see every single day with Siri, with Now, with Echo, etc. And if you fast forward just a few years, and it's a little bit, of course, unknown how much we have to fast forward, but in the quite near future, I see Siri telling a mom or a dad, hey, don't forget it's your son's birthday next Sunday or next Saturday. Have you thought about presents? How about the following for your son? And that suggestion is going to be super highly targeted on the socioeconomic level, because obviously Siri knows where you live, Siri knows what you do, Siri knows the kind of spending power that you have. And that's why I said, when we talked earlier, that I see Siri becoming the new SSP, basically. It's basically also the publisher, if you so want, and the SSP in one. Where an advertiser like us will have to then bid to be able to supply the products, because Apple is not going to be in the business of shipping boxes around, so they're going to use their data to then contract that out through an SSP-like system, so that somebody like us selling children's products can then bid on that customer. And that's why I said, looking forward, I see a whole new shift happening towards a new form of, if you so want, advertising or sponsored content, or however you might want to call it, where Siri is the gatekeeper basically towards the eyeballs, the customer today. And we're going to have to adjust to that kind of system in the future.
So basically you are applying to artificial intelligence here and some kind of knowledge, but I'm wondering how Adblock would work on that. So she would go something like, you have to buy beep and beep and beep and car beep and beep. but on that, I think this is interesting, and I want to shoot that to you, Mirko, is that is there anything that you guys are seeing based upon what you talked about here, about the trends and what is happening? Where do we have to think ahead? Where are we going?
I think the trends have been laid out quite well. Mobile definitely, and all the exchange and bidding platforms, and RTBs, but I don't see an obvious solution yet to the problem that if display advertising might not be dead, but it's super incredibly either difficult or just simply too expensive because it doesn't work. It's if you look at classic advertising, I mean, what you want to do is you want to reach a target group, and you want to reach many. Yes, even if you go very targeted, you want to reach a lot of those very targeted audiences, right? And then you want to give them a message, and that should have an impact. And I just don't see that happening on a larger scale. and my hypothesis is, if I talk to other performance-oriented players, I don't see them spending money in online video or online display in an amount that it pays off somehow. I have a really big interest in ad testing and advertising impact and whatever, right? So, I mean, I've been trying to measure the impact of display or online video in all kinds of ways. Placebos, or just show like banners versus my own banners. And then you take out all the post-view crap, right? And you just see, well, you know, even if a white banner produces 1,000 post-view sales, but that probably didn't have an impact, right? So then take the differential impact of the white banners and your own banners, and that differential impact, that's then hopefully the impact, right? Well then, but if you take the cost and divide it by that little impact that remains, it's hugely expensive. And simply, if I ask the ones who spend a lot of money, the Procter & Gamble's of the world, whatever, and how they measure quite a lot of stuff really, really well, but I don't think they measure display advertising very well. And so long story short, I'm just, sorry for telling, but I simply don't see that working on a broader scale. And the last time it worked for me personally was when it was much, much cheaper.
We can justify it based on price. But
it's a price value discussion, right? And if I pay cost per thousands and the range that the people are charging, and I don't get any impact, it's simply too expensive. Or we have to come up with more creative solutions on how those ads should look like and what they should display. But it's not, I don't think I'm the only one who doesn't have a solution. I think there are many out there who don't have a creative solution on how that should look like.
I see the Tim has grabbed the microphone. Hold on. There's a couple of twists. We have this terrible thing, recent frequency, which keeps popping up. Like I'm working with media girls, they're driving me crazy. We have to go for recent frequency, and there's no qualification of it. There's always the quantity part. Right? Just push it out there, and then the quality, and that comes back to acceptable ads. And I think this is important dialogue that needs to happen, because we are at a junction where we have a lot of shit happening. Everybody's pushing, but nobody's really understanding the impact of it. So sorry, yeah.
Yeah, well, first of all, congrats to that white banner experiment. I've never heard that before. It's brilliant. I'll definitely take you up on that. We'll have some studies, or we'll repeat that, because it's really interesting test. But then I want to add one component to this discussion. You rightly mentioned, obviously, the value for the advertiser. You rightly mentioned the value for the publishers. They need to survive and finance the content. But I would like to throw in the third value in this really important triangle, the value for the user. And in this scenario, we tend to often forget about the actual user. And there's one number is really mind-boggling for me when it comes to the user. Is you say this is display advertising is expensive, and rightly is so from an advertiser viewpoint. Publishers at the same time complain that it's too little. If you take the German online advertising market, you take away search and affiliate and a couple of other things which we're not talking about. Display and video remains is about 2 to 3 billion a year. You divide that by the number of internet users in Germany, about 8 million. You divide that by the number of months. You know what remains? 2 euros. 2 euros per month. And that's what the advertisers pay. Now take the publisher cut, all the delivery cost. You end up with €1 or €1.50 in the end of in the hands of all publishers combined, whether it's Spiegel or Bild or anything you visit. Now, question to pretty much everyone in the audience: for €1 and €1.50, wouldn't you rather not see all of those videos? And if there'd be an easy payment, you'd probably all say yes. Now, this is the value of the users. And as an advertiser or a publisher, I would think about that.
Well, if I could buy your monthly attention for €2, I would pay more. Your full undivided monthly attention, I'd pay more. And I'd tell you something meaningful, because I have a little bit more time and have a little bit more space than on a little rectangle And if I have a little bit more time and a little bit more space and I get no attention, and I know it's part of the storytelling, but it's really, really hard to even to bring a good story. I mean, look at all the viral videos or whatever. There's a couple of good videos, right? But only a few just by chance or by accident really create a large audience, right? But there's a lot of good content out, and even the good content, right? They don't get enough audience because it's completely fragmented. The formats are just not bundled right. The content is not bundled right. The formats are not bundled right, and the creatives are not bundled right. But you still charge for something that doesn't work.
Now the big question is, who has to gain in that type of fun?
I wanted to add one thing. First of all, I had a lot of remarks, actually, you being on that stage from some of you here. So, and I know, but I think it's an important discussion. You know, us being advertisers and publishers, and obviously a lot of users think something's wrong. You know, we should still have that discussion and not discuss business models or whatever. And I think what I've seen from publishers, you know, they said they were unhappy with their revenues, so we just add more advertising space on the page to just, you know, make more revenue out of the same inventory, make this page longer, you know, and then there's some stuff below the fold. So advertisers said, well, guys, you know, if 50% of my ads are not seen, you know, then I won't pay you as much. And so there's this huge inventory, a huge market mix of, you know, what's good and what's not. And what I'm thinking of is, you know, we need to have obviously more relevance in the market as well. Because if we had more relevance, you know, then we all could obviously show less advertisement, yeah, and more relevant advertisement. And the user would say, well, it's great. But here we have another issue, because the user doesn't like us storing data, at least not in Germany. You know? Always when I, you know, talk to people, they're like, well, you know, are we allowed to do this? And yeah, well, Facebook has the information, Google has the information, they're storing, they're bringing us relevant content, and like the rest of the internet is still discussing this topic. And that's what I want to, you know, focus on. Let's bring more relevant content, and maybe not the stupid retargeting content. If I was interested in a pair of shoes, maybe the next story could be, you know, how are the shoes produced by this vendor? You know, are they sold in Asia or bought in Asia for, I don't know, a couple of cents? Or do the people that produce these shoes have, I don't know, nicer surroundings at work than, you know, what we see in all the TV shows or in all the TV formats?
I want to switch a little bit back to a different topic. And we talk about the mobile. We're reaching a critical mass now where mobile is basically taking over everything. And I'm thinking here that we look at the users. So I think, as I explained before, I have a couple of kids and they're actually my demography. I have 1, 5, 10, 15, 20, and 28 actually. So I use them as my demography. So I'm constantly watching them and seeing what's happening. So if we look at mobile as such, and just take Facebook or any other format, and I actually want to divide it into two. You have social media networks, which are basically Facebook and so on. Then you have this peer-to-peer thing, which is more like Snapchat or something like that. So you have this closed ecosystem, and then you have even closed walled gardens around Facebook. But what can we learn in regards to user experience from these type of platforms, and how we can advertise better? What type of communications do we have to think about?
Well, I think it's very much in line on what was said before and what Christian said. You can do a lot more storytelling in this kind of format, and you can embed it a lot better. At least, maybe not on Snapchat, that's maybe a little bit difficult, but in the Facebook feed, it just flows a lot better to be embedded in the feed, and it's a lot more natural and a lot less obtrusive from a user perspective. And I think that's probably why it works just a lot better, and you're able to push a different type of content and a more, to speak with Tim, I guess, relevant or acceptable content towards the user.
But you have then you have this filter bubble, this algorithmical push also. So it's a thin line maybe.
Well, I think I would say that's a different question with the filter bubble, but asking what to learn from Facebook. There's one really good example. Last year I talked to a Facebook engineer of the advertising team in Facebook in the Valley, and he told me that they have a metric, and the metric is how much does user engagement go down if I have a new ad format. And they test every ad format against that metric, and if the metric goes down by 0.3%, the user engagement, and that's tiny, it's like, I'm not even sure how statistically significant that is, but it's very small, then they don't run this ad. And that happened with a lot of ads. I mean, you've seen all those announcements of auto video play and a lot of stuff, and most of the stuff never made it into Facebook. And I think that is the core every publisher needs to learn. And every publisher needs to learn that, because the alternative is being sucked into the walled gardens of Facebook, into Facebook mobile pages, or Google accelerated mobile pages, and then basically live with their terms. And that is actually much worse than ad blocking today, because there actually you still control your destiny. You control how you display everything. But in order to keep that way, make sure that actually user engagement does not go down if you add an additional ad format. And that is the one thing I think every publisher needs to learn from Facebook.
I mean, generally speaking, right? I mean, if users consume media, right, they want to be entertained or they want to be informed, right? And entertainment and information, that's it. Or they use it as a communication device, and they want to talk to you. They usually don't want to talk to us, not on a regular basis, right? Only if they want to buy it. So the only chance that we have is we entertain them or we educate them. I can only educate them if they are up for it, right? Forcing someone to this learning just in case doesn't even work in school, right? It's just learning just in time. You can only educate them if they're open for it. It's very hard to find that out. And then you can start to maybe entertain them. But if you want to tell a little longer story, like we have to do, buying eyewear online is more complicated, right? I just think that the very fast, fickle, small formats that they have to offer, it's really, really hard for us to get our message across. That might be because we're not creative enough, but I'm just saying, and that also holds true for banner ads. They have been looking the same for 20 years. And if I look at an advertiser, at a normal magazine, they have normal content that's sometimes a full page, and sometimes half a page, and sometimes quarter of a page, or an eighth. And then I look at the ads, they're just about the same size, right? One page of article, one page of ad. It's full, it's beautiful, it's big, right? Then I look on the internet, right? And then I have the content, and I have the ad. Now make that ad be more entertaining than the content there. That's just damn hard. And that's the one thing. And the other thing is, the lean forward, lean back thing, right? If TV, you are lean back, and you have your second screen, and you can react to something that you see, right? On mobile or whatever, it's really, really hard because you have to interrupt what the user is currently doing. The problem is that all the formats that would allow you to reach the consumer in a lean back position, in a larger format, right? They're walled garden paid. That's Netflix, right? You can't even get in there, right? And that's, I think, it's not a solution, but that's just a problem that it's not, I think it's really, really hard. That's just what it is. And the solution is, yes, be more entertaining and be more educative in the moment when they're open for it. But with the banners that we have, that's hard to do.
So basically what you're saying is that we need fundamental change. There's a fundamental change, and we're kind of at a crossroads in a way. So that leads me to the next question. And it is, so if we had to reshuffle everything, I mean, what would we do? What would be the first thing, like every one of you kind of pitch in on that, what would be the first thing that you want to do? And we've already spoken about a couple of things, but let's try to find a twist to this so we can get to a little bit of solution. If we would have to reinvent advertising in a way, and the way that we're pushing this forward, what type of things would we want to put forward? Is it too big of a question?
I don't know, it's just, what would interest me is sit together with a couple of publishers, quality publishers, and more of the cheap stuff, and have a user lab or whatever, and see them experiment with different types of ad formats. And I don't know if they've done it, that's just something that would interest me, right? But just look at how the user would interact if it was not a rectangle or a skyscraper, right? And we have learned with pop-ups and they did whatever, right? But I haven't seen many format innovations in the last 20 years. I would want to have a user lab and test and play around.
I'm not sure that the advertising bureau would agree on that. They keep coming up with this format of the month. Something like that. But I think this is an important point, yeah.
In my opinion, native is definitely something that we should all look into. You know, I mean, that combines data and creativity. Yeah, we have for native campaigns, and native here, I don't think that you should have a display banner on like a mobile screen, and fill the full mobile screen. That is native too, but I think native should be something that adds more content to it. That has some sort of meaning, maybe even a text and a message. Native plus relevance, as I said. Use the cross-device bridge, and we can all get more relevant profiles that we can hand over to our publishers. And I think Facebook pretty much shows us what we should do. I mean, it's not that it's not a good example out there which is working and which a lot of people like. Okay, if you don't like, that somebody's collecting data about you, and we have seen some people here, then there should be the option not to have that, and then there's always an ad blocker, obviously. But I think in the long run, relevancy is going to be the one and only key to everything.
So, 2 or 3 years ago, we asked our users to come up with films and videos, ironically to promote Adblock Plus. We just wanted to crowdsource videos, and the idea was if advertising is people, what would it look like? You can still see those videos if you Google the Creative Challenge. That was the name of the program. And we had hundreds of submissions from all over the world, which was kind of cool. And pretty much everyone embodied current advertising as annoying people jumping at other people out of context. That's the overarching theme over all those videos if you watch them. And I think that's exactly what is wrong with online advertising, and what I would change if I would be asked how to reinvent the wheel. And long story short, that probably is native, because to echo what Christian said, because native essentially means within social context. And in social context, if you're invited to the opera, you come in a fancy suit or smoking or something. If you're invited here, it's more casual. If you go to the beach, you wear your bathing suit. That is social context. Advertising is not within its social context. It's taken technical feasibility of what is doable and basically perverting the concept of being adjacent to social context in what a format is. And so essentially native is going back to that core principle. Like Google ads work well because they're within the context. There's a search, and organic almost looks as search. Email is context because there's an interaction. Any of that where there is an interaction within the social context, that works well with humans. And so, long story short, advertising needs to become more native and needs to become more human. And then I think it's just fine.
I think there might be another trend that comes into this, and that's a huge shift away from TV towards digital streaming media like Netflix, like we mentioned earlier on. And if you combine that with storytelling, I'm not sure whether this is going to work or how they're going to figure it out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're thinking about similar things, where Netflix can maybe use their increasing power and their production capabilities, because a lot of their content they produce in-house now, to somehow use native embedded elements where you're able to do more storytelling along the lines that you were mentioning earlier on. Not sure how happy I'm to see that, because it becomes even more, let's say, manipulative if you so want. But but it becomes also more relevant if you're within the social context that you are in. I'm not really talking about, there's also something that Netflix might be doing, interrupting the stream to then push classic TV ads at you, but much more maybe manipulating the stream, the video stream, to incorporate certain elements that are targeted towards the audience.
One shot, yeah, then we're going to wrap it up.
I wanted to end on a positive note. I didn't just want to complain. Coming back to what I said earlier, being more relevant. Data can help you if you have the data sources to learn about the customer, what situation he's in right now, where and whatever. That's the one thing, the data part, and the other thing that I was trying to pitch this morning is being close to the customer, and it's exactly what you said. I mean, we have to look at what the users are doing in the different environments, in the different channels, and how they're using the device, and what type of formats and what type of information they are naturally consuming, right? And we have to get as close as possible to what they're doing there. And it's just, I had an investor, and he was always saying, well, Vídeo, they do so much stuff on Facebook. I said, well, have you seen how many people post baby pictures on Facebook? Quite a few, right? So they just need to post a few baby pictures, and that's good. Have you seen how many people post pictures of you wearing eyewear, right? Very few, so it's just harder for us. But that's the trick. The trick is just, it's hard with the formats, but the trick is just to look at what the users are naturally doing in that environment, and then be as close to what they're consuming as possible. And that's something that we can do every day, and just to squeeze the most out of display advertising.
Absolutely, and I think, guys, what I want to maybe sum this up to is that we have the holy trinity of people, of the publisher, advertiser, and the user. That's the holy trinity. And as long as we are relevant, we are fine. Like that. Like very short summary of what we just spoke about. Yeah, do you agree on that? Okay, so I want to thank Christian, Tim, Florian, and Mirko for being here on stage. There's lunch. These guys are warm hand, and they'll be here around, so pick their brains, meet them outside.